Hey everybody, it's Christine at Zeidman Development, and today I get to show you the functionality that is available to export data out of the Razor's Edge and into Salsa Engage. So I am starting here on Salsa Engage, and I want to show you that the constituents that I'm working with in Razor's Edge are not in Salsa Engage. So I have a constituent named Colton James. He is not showing up there. And then I also am working with James Bond today. And let's go ahead and check. So neither Colton James or James Bond are going to show up right now in Salsa Engage. So let's go ahead and let's minimize that Salsa Engage and let's bring up Razor's Edge. So when you're working with the export function in Importacular, you do have to begin with an export in Razor's Edge. And most of the time, you really are going to begin a bit before that with a query. I'm not going to walk you through my query today. I will trust that you know how to build your query, but I want to walk you through my export because I think some of the things that I've done here might be helpful for you to think about when you build your export. So you've built your query, you've got the people that you know you want their email addresses. Maybe you're working with your board members. Maybe it's everyone who's given recently. Whoever it is that we need to add over to Salsa Engage. But now we need to create our export, and this is where we're going to determine what information we're actually going to put over and what output we need. So we're going to go ahead and open my export for Salsa. Couple things I want to mention here. Head of household processing. So if you want to put both spouses into Salsa Engage, make sure you choose that export both constituents separately. If you don't, if you want just the head of household or if you want just the first constituent found, go ahead and make your choice that way. The other thing is if you do want to use those checkboxes with inactive, deceased, and no valid address, you may have already handled that in your query, but if not, you can always work with that here. The other thing is to go over to that output tab. Now, anything that you want to move into Salsa Engage has to be here on this output tab. So I'll leave that to you. I'm sure you have lots of things that you're going to want to work with your available fields. Couple things I want to mention. I highly recommend that constituent ID going in your external ID field in Salsa Engage. Definitely going to make a huge influence in your importing and being able to link your records between the two systems. The other thing I do want to mention is that we want to make sure you only have one email address. So Razor's Edge definitely lets you have, I think, as many as you possibly want. But Salsa Engage, you do have to be specific about what email address you want to bring over. So while you can make some limits working in your query, you're also going to need to do some of this work here in export. So I'm going to go ahead and open my criteria here so you can see what I've done. And I do have a more detailed video that talks about this, but just to mention, I have chosen to only export one. I have only included email phone types. I'm excluding anything that's marked as do not contact, and I am sorting with the primary in descending. So that means that the primary that has yes is going to come first, and anything after that is going to come next. So it doesn't matter which email type has been marked as any, it's going to start with that. Now, if your email type is how you want to work with this, then you could sort by phone type. If you care about sorting by date last changed, whatever is most relevant for your data, you just need to figure out how that works for you. I'm going to go ahead and close my export here, and we're going to walk through the process of setting up our mapping. So we're going to open Importacular, and we're going to go to our export tab as soon as it's up on our screen. All right, so once we have this open, we have two tabs here. We have select an import source, and that's something you've seen before if you've been in Importacular for any time at all. But we're actually going to work with our export destination. So we need to click on this tab, and then we click on Salsa Export. So now we're going to go ahead and tell that start, and that's going to allow us to work with our export. Now we can either build a new template or we can work with one that already exists. I am going to open the one that I already have so we can kind of take a look and you can see what we've done with those fields. So we're going to click here on the pencil so we can open that up. It's going to ask us to check for our export in Razor's Edge. This is the one that I am working with. So I'm just going to say that okay. If it wasn't the one I wanted, I would click on that magnifying glass there so I could search for my export. So now you can see we've got 4 different options. We can work with our supporter with an address, we can add contact information, and we can add custom fields. Now, because we have already mapped a supporter and an address, those are grayed out, but we can look at what we have mapped. So let's start with our supporter. So you can see here that I had the birth date, I had a constituent ID, I had the first name, the last name, the middle name, the suffix, and the title. Those were all fields that I exported out of Razor's Edge. Now, these names do look kind of funny. They are the names that directly come out of Razor's Edge. If those are too difficult for you, and sometimes they are, they're a little bit code heavy and sometimes not easy to figure out, you can rename them in the export. And I did rename my email address. My phone number has been renamed to email, so you'll see that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at my address. Now you can see on my address I have a few different things as well. And I have added an opt-in date. Now if this isn't the correct date, we can of course change it. So let's go ahead and make it today. And then we can go ahead and leave that as it is. Now let's open that email address, and that's one of our contact fields. Now you can see that my Razor's Edge field for this does just say email, and that's because, as I mentioned earlier, I renamed it because it was a little bit complicated to look at. So if these are harder for you, or if you just want to make sure it's really clear, you can always rename it in your RE export. I've also chosen my contact type, which is a default value out of Salsa Engage. I can always change this date, so let's go ahead and make it today. I've given a reason for the change of saying that this is added from Razor's Edge, and I've opted this constituent in. Now, I've also worked with a custom field of a nickname, so you can see this is the name of my field in Salsa Engage, and I've added my Razor's Edge nickname to it. And I added an interest code. So again, custom field in Salsa Engage of interests, and then in Razor's Edge it was an interest. And I do want to mention this is another field that I renamed in my export, so definitely something you can take advantage of. And let's go ahead and save and close our templates. We're going to add a control report, and you definitely want to make a new one every time you do this if you're doing your imports in real database, so you can keep track of that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to export my data. So you can see that we've got one record that we processed, and we did make an update on one record. So let's go ahead and let's view that control report. So we can see the records here, and then we can come to our detail tab and we can see which record we've updated. So let's go ahead and let's close that. Let's go ahead and come back to Salsa Engage, and let's take a quick peek at our records. So we have updated this, so let's refresh our screen, and let's go ahead and look at our information. So we do have Colton James here with that email address, and let's also do a quick look for our other email that we worked with. So we did have somebody already in the system with this email address, so that's why it updated rather than importing again. I hope that this has been helpful for you. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you make great use of export in Salsa Engage.